Welcome, everyone, to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. Now, I'm wondering how many of you would consider yourselves amazing salespeople, or whether you might say, I'm just not a natural salesperson. Well, if that's the case, then you have tuned into the right episode. Today, we're going to talk about how to land clients from speaking events without being slimy. Our special guest today is Nikki Rausch. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. This is one of my favorite topics.
Oh, yay. Okay. Well, it's my favorite topic too. I actually love sales personally. I know many of our listeners do not love sales. But we're going to talk through kind of the steps to making sure that we get sales from presentations. But before we dive into that, tell everybody a little bit about your background.
So I am a sales professional. That was a sales career. I've been in sales for over 25 years. In addition to that, and I had a lot of success there. I was sold primarily in the technology space, closing big multi-million dollar deals, selling to big companies. Um, and managing a large territory. So I was a road warrior for many years. I always
Yes.
joke that it's actually not a joke, but my airline used to send me a Christmas gift every year because I flew so much. So that kind of gives you an idea.
Yes, that's
The true
that's
road warrior.
and I know speakers who are listening can really relate to that
Yeah.
road warrior term.
Yeah, for sure. And so I started my own business 7 years ago, which is called Sales Maven. And I am now a coach, a speaker, a podcaster, an author. But really, I focus on the sales conversation. I have an extensive background in neurolinguistic programming. And if that's a new term to anybody listening, it's really the study of communication and how we speak, how we think, how we show up, how we engage with others. And so I love the sales conversation. And any time that you are speaking, you are having a conversation.
Mhm.
So I love talking about that. And now I work with clients around the world and really help people get more strategic in their conversations and boost their confidence so that they don't have to worry about sounding salesy or slimy or gross. It is authentic, real conversation that's happening and making it really easy for people to decide, yes, you're the person I want to work with, or no, and doing that quickly.
And I love that you said it's not, I just think that there's a lot of people who have a thought. I'm studying mindset right now, and I recognize that our thoughts equal our results. So if you have a thought in your brain, I hate sales, I can tell you right now that is going to get in your way of success. And so this conversation that we're about to have, I think is incredibly helpful. How to land clients from speaking events without being slimy. So just explain a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, one example of what I mean by that is I know what it's like to be in the audience where you show up and you think, "Oh my gosh, I'm super excited to hear what this speaker has to say. I'm going to learn something." And all you're getting is pitch, pitch, pitch the whole time. And you walk away and you go like, "I didn't get anything out of that other than a sales pitch, and I kind of feel like I need to go take a shower now."
Mm,
And I
so
think
disappointing.
it's so disappointing. And I think one of the things that often goes wrong for that speaker is somewhere, somehow, somebody told them that's how it's supposed to be done,
Right.
or they're not really sure how to convert. And so they get too wrapped up in like, I better make this count. So I got to close clients. And so I'm going to be, I'm going to really push hard on the sales piece. And they don't actually deliver any results and people don't walk away and get anything out of it. And frankly, if your audience doesn't walk away feeling like, oh my gosh, I could totally implement that thing and I'm going to, and I'm going to get results, they're not going to want to do anything more with you. So I think that's what I mean by it.
Okay, and let's also differentiate the difference between someone who speaks to sell and someone who is actually more our listener who gets paid to speak. When you're speaking to sell and you've offered to do a freebie, I wouldn't say the governor is off and you want to go crazy
Mm.
on in terms of how much you're actually selling, but I will say I think you have just slightly more leeway to
I agree.
push the envelope. But let's, for the purpose of this conversation, imagine that we are indeed getting paid. I remember one story back when I was still with the Speakers Bureau of a speaker who we had placed into a presentation, very well-known best-selling author who had done I think it was like a 20-minute pitch on his products. And when they drilled it down to how much, it was thousands and thousands of dollars per minute because they had spent, in the tens of that multiple $10,000 to hire this speaker. And so they calculated how much the pitch cost them per
Oh my
minute. They were
gosh.
so angry. So
Yeah.
let's be clear that that's in no way the goal here. Is to make your client be the last thing that they remember about you is how hard you pitched their clients. So let's talk about what some of the steps might be to whatever the opposite of that is.
Yeah. Well, one step, I think, and this is so crucial, and I will say, I think this step is crucial whether you're getting paid to speak or whether you're speaking with this opportunity to want to sell something. And I think it's pre framing at the very beginning of your talk, because when you get paid to speak, you only have a certain amount of time with that audience, and they're probably going to want more. And so you want to set the stage for them by doing what I call a pre frame. And that could be something as simple as, today, what we're going to talk about is X, Y, and Z. Now, there may be an opportunity where some of you are going to want more, a deeper dive. There is an opportunity to get that. But here's what we're going to focus on today.
I
And
like
should
that.
you decide you want more, come talk to me after, or there's a link there that you can go visit my website. But let's get into the content of why we're here today. So that's
That
that
really,
pre-frame. I just planted that seed.
that's a nice little seed to plant because you're teeing it up and in a very very non-confrontational way, in a way that people would not feel at all um, slimy about. So, okay. And then that's the beginning of the presentation. So now I'm going to assume that we're going to do some more things to do subtle seed planting throughout. What might that look like?
So that's usually done in the form of a story. So
Yes.
when you are, you know, talking about whatever that talking point is, you're teaching something, you're delivering on whatever it was that they hired you and promised, share stories. And
Mm,
when you share stories, the thing about a story, and maybe many of your speakers already know this, but we love stories. Stories are the language of the brain. And so when you share a story about, here's how one of my clients, and you could even say, here's how my client that brings me back year after year, this is how they've been able to use this one thing that we're going to talk about today. And then you share the story. So notice how I just planted this seed, like they bring me back
they
year after year.
bring you
So
back
it's,
year after year. Love
yeah,
that.
it's these little tiny things that you do. Another example, can I give one more example around
Oh,
that?
we can go beyond that. Yes.
Okay. Another example is when you get to the place where you're doing Q&A, right? Or when somebody has a question.
Hmm.
It's easy to want to just give the answer because you know the answer because you're the expert on the topic that you're there
Right.
to speak about. However, there's also an opportunity to plant seeds with questions. So, for instance, they might ask a question that isn't totally focused 100% on what they actually hired you to deliver, but
Hmm.
you have a talk on that or you have a training on that.
Love
You don't
it.
want to just give the answer. You want to say, that is a great question. And I do have a talk that dives deeper. Let me give you one tip to get you
Yes.
started.
That's really good. Okay, so what we're planting for, and I want us to just explore together all of the things that we could be planting for. Okay, so you first mentioned repeat business. We're
Yes.
planting for, I had a client who has had me back year after year. During Q&A, you can plant for other topics. Again, that kind of comes back to spin-off.
Mm-hmm.
But we can also look at all of the different revenue streams that we might offer. Let's say somebody does executive coaching. That
Mm-hmm.
might be something that they tell a story about or plant a seed. So it's basically a nice, I loved that upfront. What did you call it?
Pre-framing.
Pre-framing. I love that term. And I love that you kind of right at the front, I'm going to give you something, so don't worry, something is coming, is fantastic. And I think that that's a really nice way to plant the seed, because now I'm curious about what that, my brain, I don't know, this, you tell me if this is why NLP works so well. My brain is now curious about that, and that curiosity is just kind of waiting for you to tell me more about what you'd have already said. So let's say you do executive coaching. Would you say a story about a client and plant the seeds that way?
Absolutely. You could say, if somebody asks a question, you could say, that reminds me of one of my executive coaching clients that I was working with last week. Here's what we did, or here's what we worked on, and here were the results. So my suggestion to you would be, and then you give them a little suggestion that's relevant to them, their
Love it.
company, something like that. And so just by planting that seed, like when you say, my executive coaching client that I just worked with last week, that also says like, hey, guess what? People hire me right now to do this.
And maybe you could even say, my executive coaching client that I work with every
Yes.
week makes
Yes.
them go, ooh, well, I want to talk to you every week. So it could be just a subtle little piece of language, depending on how you work with your clients,
Yep.
obviously.
Exactly.
All right. And what if you have a book and you want people to go and buy your book as a result? What would be a seed conversation that you might plant into your program then?
So you could do that. There's many ways that you could do it, but one example would be to say something like, okay, now the story that I'm going to share with you, it comes right from the book. Now, just because I'm giving you this one story, that's not the only story in the book. So if you love this story, you're going to love the other stories that are shared. But
Yeah.
here is a story that many people resonate with. And then I'm going
Okay.
to tell the story.
Okay.
Now, you
And
would say the name of your book too. Like,
sure. Would you say that that can be sometimes, I find during interviews that are being done in order to promote a book, that if you've brought the book up, well, in the book I say, and da 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 in the book, and
mhm,
in the book, and in the book, I think that can get redundant
I
personally.
agree.
Where do you think we need to draw the line after how many references should we stop talking about the book? I mean, because the interviewer is going to say, okay, let's talk about where people can buy your book. Like, don't worry,
Yes.
that's going to happen in a good book interview.
Absolutely. So if you're doing an interview that is about your book,
Hmm.
I don't think you need to bring it up probably more than 3 times in an
Three.
interview. I
I
love
like
I
that.
love things in 3s and 5s, so that's
Yes.
just it's kind of my go-to. I try not to say the same thing more than 3 times. Now,
Okay.
repetition is great. Our brains love repetition.
Sure.
And if you're doing a short, 30-minute to an hour interview, I don't think you need to bring it up more than 3 times
Yeah.
because the host is gonna talk about it at the beginning of the show, they're gonna talk about it at the end of the show. Um,
It's handled.
yeah, it's there. They've got it. If they
It's
want it, they'll
handled.
go
And
search for you.
yeah. And they're going to end the show by saying how you can go ahead and get it. So I think I kind of, I don't even say this for professional speakers. I really say it more for authors who I have seen it a lot with actually quite famous authors. You
Yes.
don't have to use that term quite so often because it does
Yeah.
get redundant. Okay, so we've talked about books, we've talked about coaching. Some other services that people might have could be, masterminds or courses or online memberships or something like that. Any tips that you have for those types of things?
Well, it's the same thing about planting the seed and
Mm-hmm.
bringing that up. So, um, for instance, I work with clients privately, but I also have a membership platform.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes if I'll get a question at this, like in the, if I'm on stage, when I get a question, I might say, that's a great question. I have a training on it that lives inside the Sales Maven Society. And I also work with clients often privately so that we can tailor the answer to them. So, is it okay if I ask you one question about your business so I could tailor my answer to you?
Oh,
So,
good.
notice I just planted, I've got these two ways to work with me. I've got the membership, I've got private coaching,
Yeah.
and you probably want an answer that's tailored to you. So, in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to ask you a question.
Oh, you're good. I love the language that you're using, and you can
Thank
just
you.
tell that you are a salesperson from way back, like someone who is. I have to give out a shout out to my client Frank Soma, who also is steeped in NLP in terms of his sale, and also talks about coming at this from a place of authenticity.
Yes.
And I really like the technique. Okay, so I do wonder how much, like, are you asking too much from a keynote if you dropped 5 different seeds? How many seeds are too many seeds? Should we try to focus on one seed multiple times or what?
Well, I always ask, like, what's your outcome? What do you most want to do? And if you'd like to, yes, you can have multiple outcomes, but frankly, you'll start to muddy the waters if you're
Yeah, that's
giving
what I'm
too
wondering.
many
So let's pick a lane
ways.
on our seeds. Like how
Yeah, pick a
many?
lane.
Yeah,
And it's okay I would have one primary that, like, what's my next outcome here, which could be that I want the next speaking gig, but it could also be I want executive coaching clients. So depending. And
gotcha.
so think about what your primary one is, and
Yeah,
that's where you're going to want to give most of your examples. And if you want to throw in one or two examples that go back to that
secondary.
second,
Yep.
yeah, otherwise, I feel like, again, you're just kind of muddying the waters. And it starts to sound, frankly, like you're pitching
Yeah.
constantly
Yes,
when you do that.
exactly. You have to be cautious of that. So, what I'm thinking is if you're a speaker whose book gets you a lot of traction with new clients, then maybe that's a great low bar for you to kind of plant 3 times throughout a presentation or something like that. But spin-off, I think, is something that is very easy and subtle. Doing a good job creates spin-off. That's
Yes.
we've often said, there's no better form of marketing than a really great presentation. One of the things, Nikki, I'm seeing right now is that in virtual, people are forgetting to ask for the business. They are forgetting about all of the opportunities that they would have done live. They aren't really doing them. Somehow they got shook out of them. I know that there are speakers who are listening to this right now saying to themselves, well, wait a second, I do some of this. But for those of you who have kind of set it aside for virtual, what would you recommend? Are we just doing everything exactly the same as we would for live? Is there any nuances that you've noticed?
Well, one of the things that I would do live is I love to have a handout. And on the handout, there's some type of like next step that people can take with me. So that doesn't really work virtual. You could have a download, but you don't have the same, you're not going to get as many people downloading it,
Control
right?
over it. So it could be a text too in order to grab their email address. I think
Yes.
that's where the opportunity is really, really being missed, is that people aren't grabbing email addresses and adding people to their database as a result of all the virtual that's going on.
I totally agree. I love to have a download. I mean, I do it when I go on a podcast, I do it when I speak, especially
Mhm.
when I'm speaking a paid speaking gig to an audience that those people have also potential to work with me, hire me. They're a part of an organization or whatever the thing is. So I'm always going to have a download. Now, I will ask the organizer, like, is it okay that I offer this?
Right.
And
And
when
you
it's
asked me, and I said, absolutely. So let's go ahead and tell everybody what that is right now, and we'll just model it for you.
okay. So the way that I position it, as I always say, I like to give a gift when I get to come and spend time with you. So my gift to you today is an ebook, and it's called Closing the Sale. And it's all around building that confidence with that sales language and moving people through. I teach a structure called the selling staircase. I know that's not the topic we're talking about today, but
Hmm.
the 5 steps of the selling staircase. So this really focuses on the last three: the discovery, the proposal, and the close language. So you can get that by going to my website, yoursalesmaven.com/TWS for the Wealthy Speaker podcast. So TWS is how you're going to get this. This is my gift to you today. And I'd love for you to get that. And then we'll be connected.
Yeah, I just love I kind of just wanted to unpack everything that you just said because you planted the seed. Number one, if you don't go and get that book, that sounds really silly because it's free and it's something that you would definitely want to know. But then you also planted another program. So you're kind of modeling it in several different ways, just all in that one sentence. And I just love how, let's talk about for a second how you remained your authentic self when you went into all that you just said. I have found that at times at the end of my webinars that I have sometimes shifted my own behavior due to some thought that I had of about doing a big pitch at the end of a webinar. I have told myself somehow that a big pitch is not okay or whatever it might be. And I have noticed a shift in myself. I went from amazing Jane, who's given all the good stuff and I'm firing on all cylinders, to pitch Jane, who's just kind of like, okay, there's some version of me that I don't really love right there. So you just modeled something really brilliantly for us in that you stayed very much true to yourself. How did you do that?
Okay. So to answer, I have a bunch of answers to this question, but the thing that I would say for you specifically for your trainings or webinars, you
Mm-hmm.
have to pre-frame at the beginning that there is going to be something coming.
Yes,
And
love
what
that.
we're doing then is we're planting the seed and we're setting the stage like, ooh, this is going to be fun, right?
Yes.
And then when you get to that place where you deliver the offer, one of the mistakes, and you mentioned this earlier, is like that mindset stuff that like you've been studying mindset and you're really
Mm-hmm.
focused on it right now. When you get in this mindset of like, oh my gosh, now I have to do something to somebody,
Yeah.
then it feels gross. Like sales is not something that you do to somebody. Sales is something you do with people. And these people are hearing this offer from you for the first time. You might have given this offer a million times in the course of your, I know you have an extensive career that you probably given your offer many times, but you have to say it as if it is exciting and as fun and as authentic that it really is for their benefit. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's not for the benefit of every single person who's listening or every single person who's on that training with you. It's for the people who are ready for more. And we have to talk to that person and we have to talk
Mm.
to a person, not everybody. Like it's like for the for those of you who are ready for more, here's how to get it,
Ooh.
because it is super satisfying to our brains when we're on a training with Jane and she tells me how I can get more, Jane. It's really
Mm.
satisfying. It's unsatisfying to me when I get on a training with Jane and I go, wow, this lady knows how to do stuff that I don't know how to do. I want more of her. And then she doesn't tell me how to get more. Or if she acts uncomfortable with the getting more, then I go like, oh, well, that doesn't seem like she's really into this. I don't think she's
Right.
going to enjoy this program that she's selling.
Right. Right.
So you really want to be like, this is, you have to say it almost like you're saying it for the first time. I mean, you don't want to stumble over your words when you say it, but you want to have that same sense of excitement and fun and energy to it. And it really is, I would say sales is like an offer. It's like you hold your hand out to the other person and you go, in my hand is this offer. And if you'd like it, it's right there. And I look at it and I tell you a little bit about it. And then I just hold it there. I don't shove my hand down your throat. I
Right.
don't put it up into your face. I just hold it in front of me. And then if
Mm.
you choose to take it, awesome. We get to work together, or you get my download, or whatever that piece is. So you just want to keep it very like, it's right here for you. I'd love to gift it to you. And if you want it, great. And if not, I'm just going to put my hand down and then
I'm
we'll
just
go
going to put
on
it
with the
back in my
conversation.
pocket.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it right back in my pocket. You have given us some really awesome language, and I'm actually going to use that. That is going to be the switch in my brain, because if I'm only talking to the people who are really ready for more, then let me just tell you all the stuff. It's the people who aren't ready for more that I think I've been resistant of, or something in the back of my mind. And of course, I've gotten better and better and better at this over the years. But every once in a while, there's still this little like hesitancy or something. But if I put a Post-it note up and says, for the people who are ready for more, let me hold out my gift for you in my hand, and now let me describe my gift to you. And don't be afraid to describe my gift to you. This is really something that we will be doing a lot more every month. We're having webinars to promote and bring people into the Wealthy Speakers School. And I can't tell you, Nikki, how good the school really is. I mean, it's good. For emerging speakers, they get way more than they are paying for sure, and just tons and tons of value. So thank you. You have given me an incredible gift. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're
Okay.
welcome.
So let's talk about people who might want to have their virtual program or their live program lead to a discovery call. And I'm just hoping that people are really like, I love your voice. It's very non-confrontational. It's kind of sweet and a little bit soft. Like you just have this really lovely way about you. But
Wow.
here you
Thank
are,
you.
your lid's badass going on with like your language just kills. Tell us how you would get to a discovery call from anything you're doing, webinar, whatever it might be.
So, how I get to the discovery call is I issue an invitation. It
Okay.
has to be really clear what that next step is.
Okay.
And so, to get to the discovery call, it's the, you know, um, I always say, like, you want to create some curiosity. So, what are you going to do on the discovery call? And the discovery call, it's super important on the discovery call that you don't treat it like this is a hard sales call. You also don't coach on discovery calls, frankly. You don't give away your expertise for free.
Right.
And I can dig into any of what I just said in more detail if you'd like.
Sure.
But the idea behind getting people to the discovery call is they need to see some benefit behind it. One
Mhm.
of the versions of a discovery call that I do is a selling strength assessment. It's an opportunity for somebody to get on the phone with me and for us to go through a set list of questions to understand what's working with them in the sales process. What's something that maybe needs a little bit more attention? And then where are those areas that they feel like they're just not getting any traction and momentum? So, whether or not we work together at the end of the discovery call, you're going to know more about your own sales process.
Mhm.
And then at the end, should you choose, there's an opportunity for us to do a next step together.
Oh, I love that you have a framework and a name for your discovery calls, because I think most people just call it a discovery call and assume that the client is going to lean in towards that. But when you say selling strengths assessment, well, now it's like, well, I want to know if I've got, I want to know, is there a rating? How do I compare with other people? I mean, all of a sudden my competitive spirit is kicking in and I must have that assessment. That is so good, Nikki. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
what can you, with your topic, think about framing up and how you deliver your discovery call? I'm thinking about all kinds of things right now that would make people want to lean in and say, yes, I need that call. I need that call with you. So that's something that we're going to have people be thinking about. I absolutely love that. Um, Tell everybody again, first of all, Sales Maven, great language. Um, just love your URL. So it's yoursalesmaven.com. But tell everybody again where they can get that free ebook. I want to make sure we document that well, and we'll have it on our show notes. If you go to speakerlauncher.com and click on podcast, you can grab the full version with all the links of the show notes.
Thank you. So you can get that by going to yoursalesmaven.com/TWS. So that's specific to your podcast listeners. They can get that download.
Beautiful. And okay, so is there anything that we should have covered here in this conversation that we've missed, or any little kind of mindset tip or piece that you think is important for people to keep in mind when they are making sure that they're getting the most out of their time on the stage?
Well, we'll see whether or not this is an interesting topic for you, but here's one of the things that I often work with people, even really people who are much more experienced speakers even than I am. It's what they do when they come off the stage that often can make or break how profitable that opportunity was.
Mm.
So when you come off the stage and people come up to you, and they will, because you're awesome at what you
Mm-hmm.
do and you just delivered like, more than they could have ever expected, they're going to come up and give you what I call buying signals, which buying signals are verbal and nonverbal cues that people give that indicate like they're interested or they'd like more. So when somebody comes up to you, when you just came off the stage and they were like, this was amazing, this was the best talk we've ever had, and I feel like my husband's company would benefit from working with you. I don't want you to go like, oh, great, please send them my information. I want you to say, thank you so much. What would be a good way for me to connect with your husband? And would you be willing to make that introduction on my behalf? Like, take it one step further. Or if they say like, we have another event coming up in the summer and we're still deciding on our speakers, schedule a time right then with them on their calendar to talk about what it's going to look like for you to be one of those speakers. Don't just say like, well, here's my card, call me, because they're not going to call you.
Yes, we need to make sure that we're in control. And on the back of their card, you might be writing down the details of what it is that they're telling you so that you'll remember and you'll follow it up immediately. Love the term buying signals. Now, we have something that we often, especially for people who are going out and doing what we call the rubber chicken circuit. So that's the people who are out speaking for free. And it's right before they close their presentation, right before their closing story, they would say 2 lines. As you can see, we call it the help me speech. It's a Tom Wininger technique from many moons ago. As you can see, I'm passionate about whatever the topic might be. In your case, it would be selling. If you know of anyone who could benefit from this, please come and hand me your business card after we're done. So just 2 lines. As you can see, I'm passionate about this topic. If you know of anyone who could benefit from this information, please come and hand me your business card. Now, tell me what your take is on that. Would that be okay, or do we need to change it up for the future?
So I think it's okay. I want to give you maybe a couple other ways or another way to think about it.
All right.
So instead of talking about being passionate about it, because passionate is about you, and most people in the audience are less interested in you than they are about them.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if you say, as you might suspect, there is a lot more that we could talk about and cover. And this topic will benefit many people. Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to share with me people who you know that need to hear this? Would you come up and share your business card with me before you leave today?
Okay.
Like, now,
I like
when you
that.
say to
I like
somebody
the teeing
like,
up, as you might suspect, There's
Yeah.
a lot more here that we could cover. And I don't mind the term if you know of anyone who you think could benefit. I actually think that's still a pretty good thing that we could go to next, and then telling them exactly what to do. Because I think a lot of people who stand in line to talk to you, they want to help you. They just
Yes.
don't know how.
Yeah.
And you are leading the horse directly to the water. And I think that that is very powerful.
Just to clarify, the reason I don't use if often, and
Ah,
I'm not saying don't ever use if, because
mhm.
there's no hard and fast to any and all, right? Like I'm not using a universal qualifier here. The thing about if is it lets your brain go like, I don't know if
No, I
I'm
don't.
kind
I
of too busy
don't
to
know
think
if I
about it. But if you say, would you be willing to share this with somebody who you know would benefit? Your
am.
brain starts to think about, who am I going to share it with? So
It's a
it's a
better
tiny little
open.
tweak.
Yeah. Okay, I gotcha. All right. Well, we'll work on that. Inside the school, a lot of people are using some of these techniques, and I think we can work on that and make it even tighter. You know, the two lines that we're going to say right before we close, very non-problematic in terms of the client, but you definitely, I think, should feel free to use them, certainly on the rubber chicken circuit and up to a certain fee level. I have clients who are charging $30,000 who are not going to say those two lines, nor do they need to, because there are already people on the phone texting, you know, their office to say we need to get this person in here. And so there's different levels in what we
Yeah.
do with different people. So, Nikki, you have been just a treasure trove of value here today on the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to chat with you and talk about these things.
Well, I know that I'm going to send all my students in the school straight to this podcast right away. Monica, put an urgency sign on this one. We need to get it out pronto. Thank you so much for being here, Nikki. And for those of you listening in, hey, let us know if something that we have said has impacted you here today. Reach out to us in some form. And with that, we will say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone.